I've got time for it. He's egotistical and motivated and absolutely cunning. He's somebody that really believes in those core values of crypto. And he's looking to create a product that I think, implemented properly, could greatly improve crypto. How well will he do that? Will he get there? How well will we get behind him? How well will we help him build this and get people using it? That remains to be seen. But, a lot of those things are within his control and our control. So I'm super excited to go on this journey. And I think you guys should be too. I guess with that, I'm happy to let anybody else who wants to come up on stage and talk about, specifically, we want to talk about Provex here. Any thoughts or insights that you guys have are most welcome. We can debate things. Let's keep it to talking about Provex in particular, not your butthurt feelings about, the Sacrafice or Richard or whatever. Please request the mic if you want to come up on stage. And now I'll unmute Moritz and I don't know if I know how to. Dylan, how do I unmute these guys? Oh, you're not muted. Hello.
Yeah, this should be good.
How you doing, Mr. Chairman, everyone? I see 10 thumbs up here, Giga. Yeah, I just wanted to say, Provex is something very similar to something called localbitcoins.com that I was using very early on in the crypto days. Obviously, it got
me too, actually. I used it as well. It was one of the first ways I got Bitcoin. Yep.
Yeah, it's basically a privatized version of localbitcoins.com. Like, it's got a private layer on it. I think it got overridden by regulations and obviously got closed down. But that was it's basically what I would say. That's the closest thing I could compare Provex to. It's like it's a local Bitcoins with a privacy layer.
Decentralized, basically.
Yeah,
decentralized local Bitcoin
with a privacy layer.
But it's not just Bitcoin. It's all coins, basically all major coins.
Yeah, all major coins. I've got a lot of faith in Provex, not just because of the technology and mechanism that it's bringing in, but just obviously because of the low valuation, as well as Mr. Chairman was saying. But other than that, he pretty much covered everything, and I agree with pretty much everything he said. But so the easiest way to explain it would be if any of you did use local Bitcoins, early on. I think it got when did it get shut down? It was it went until like 2020, I think.
They started implementing KYC where you had to do KYC if you wanted to participate on local Bitcoins, like a year or two before they shut it down or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but there was a lot of money going through there, and if Provex proves to be anything like that, especially given that it's going to be a lot more than just Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think local Bitcoins is doing in the end, considering it's going to be all coins that can be exchanged. I mean, this opens up a whole world of possibility, and local Bitcoins, just with Bitcoin and Ethereum, was generating enough volume. They was turning over a lot of money. So I've got a lot of faith that this thing will actually take off, just because it has real use case. It's something that and considering the regulations now, he's obviously able to do what wasn't able to be done before. And obviously that's since Trump's come in, and a lot more possibilities on the horizon now, and this could be one of the major opportunities that takes off, and it still has got a ridiculously low valuation. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen phase 2, phase 3. Someone could come in with a load of money, Richard Hart could come in with a load of money, but right now it's very low valuation.
Yeah, I think you made a great point there. I think it's probably important for you guys to understand one dodgy little OTC desk in, Hong Kong probably does more volume every year than, you know, we do on Pulsechain, right? Like this is a big, massive use case, right? It's it's a huge market, absolutely huge.
That's going to bring a lot of volume on chain.
Yeah,
It's going to be ridiculous
if you
compared to what the volume is now.
if this thing is a smash hit and it's doing billions of dollars of volume, it's going to be creating tens of millions of dollars of fees, and you're going to see this thing bought and burnt constantly every time some whale somewhere. Because the other thing is the OTC desk might start using this as well, because this might be useful for them, right? It might help them do facilitate their transactions, right? So especially the dodgy ones, right? So these guys who are basically bringing cash to people buying Ferraris in Dubai, they'll basically they'll come, they'll deliver the cash, right? They'll get paid in Bitcoin, and they'll use this to go from Bitcoin to let's say stable coins on Solana or whatever they need to do to offset their liability, right? So this can be used by professionals in that industry, and because maybe they don't want to have to go through an exchange, maybe they don't want to have to explain what they're doing, right? Because this thing's permissionless and decentralized, and in a way, one of the cool things to think about is Richard Hart is a bit of a renegade, right? As you guys all know. So he's very unique in that he's this sort of renegade billionaire with a massive community following, right? Like the people that could do this generally probably wouldn't want to have this thing attached to their name, right? Because it probably risk their other businesses and operations. But Richard doesn't have that problem, unlike other guys. You know what I mean? So if you're somebody who owns a major CEX, you probably don't want to have this attached to your name, right? Because it risks your other property. You might get raided or something like that. But Richard's already kind of on the run, if you will, and so he's sort of uniquely positioned to do this. Like I don't think anybody that I can think of is in as good a position as he is to do this or would do it. Right, so he is kind of the right man for the job, in my opinion.
Yeah, it all depends on what happens with Interpol, really. But I think he's gonna destroy them.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll work his way through that. That's what lawyers are for. Lawyers are great middlemen. They provide you legal advice and defense, and they're very, very good when you have money, like he does. So, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think the SEC was a lot bigger case for him to handle. So considering what happened with that, I just think Interpol is going to be a breeze for him. I could be wrong, but I think all of that's going to get dropped personally.
Yeah, they'll work through it over time, I'm sure. And we don't know is how far along that is. But I mean, that's really just a tax issue. Billionaires always have tax issues. They usually end up with fines or whatever and settlements. I think that gets sorted over time, but I don't have any information, so not that there's anybody else on that. But that's my assumption. And you wouldn't do this if you didn't if you didn't think you have a good chance of getting through that. So yeah, I think tremendous opportunity here. Local Bitcoins is a great thing to bring up. Some people think this is just a ZK2P fork. I don't think it's just a ZK2P fork. I think there's probably other things that go with it, but that might be another thing to look at, obviously, if you guys want. But what ZK2P doesn't have is they don't have a super rich founder and a massive pre-built community that knows how to use DeFi. So good luck, ZK2P. I think they've done, low single-digit millions in volume over the past month. They're not exactly setting the world on fire, right? Nobody's heard of it. The name sucks. Whereas we as a community, we can all start telling our friends about it and start using it, and get people really fired up and excited about it. And we're going to have a token that's already trading. That was another key thing that we found out today from an investment standpoint, is that we're likely to have a token before the product, which to me means I think Richard wants this thing to have a trading token early rather than later, which is a big departure, maybe a learning lesson from Pulse and Pulsex. He wants to give you guys an incentive to let this thing trade and price in perfection, and really get behind it early and capture this trend by having a token that captures people's imagination early. And so I think we're going to get a token probably in Q1 2026. Sometime after the Sacrafice closes in early January. And I think that really mitigates the risk in this whole thing. It's a massively bullish piece of information that we received today. To me, it was the one question I wanted Richard to answer more than anything, and he effectively did with that tweet. Yeah, go ahead, Menzino.
Sorry, what did I miss? What was the tweet?
So it's in the nest. Dylan, which one was it?
I think it's the second last one. All right, so he's posted this from the Provex.com or Provex.com Twitter account. It said Provex.com is up 6.25% daily rate increase starts in 1 day and 17 hours. The token can launch shortly after the sacrifice phase completes. The token itself can exist before the infrastructure that burns it is fully operational.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, it's just hidden there in the last sentence.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah,
very subtle, but very good news.
I just wanted to add, I've got some stats from localbitcoins.com, because it is a much better comparison than ZK. So localbitcoins.com no longer operates, as it shut down in February 2023. But its volume was once substantial, peaking at around $100 million weekly by 2017. By late 2020, its weekly volume had dropped to approximately 5.5 to 7.5 million, and I think that's when the regulations were starting to come in, and people were getting scared already that had accounts on there, because obviously it had a wallet on there and stuff like that. Came with a wallet, but yeah, it peaked at around $100 million a week. The volume on localbitcoins.com, just to give you a decent comparison to what kind of volume can go through this thing. So
I mean that was pretty clunky, right? That wasn't automated, decentralized, permissionless. Like you have to actually go find somebody, to interact with. Whereas this should hopefully be the type of thing where our bots, looking to do arbitrage, for example, between the different L1s, they should be able to. It didn't have a coin either. Good point. But our bots looking to arb, prices of different things that they're long and short, should ideally be able to use this to basically close their arbs, automatically. So like you might not even be interfacing with a human on this. It might just be somebody that is using it to move money around from one position to another, right? That would be an absolutely killer add-on. So it's something that I've already got my lead dev thinking about. Is how we could use this to basically arb stuff, because it's something that's in our core competency that we like to do as well. So that's just an example of something that this could theoretically do. Now the fee is pretty high. I don't know if our bots are going to pay 2% or 1% each way, but I'm sure there's a way that that could work. And we'll see more when Richard kind of brings out the product. But I'm hoping that this is something that's a lot easier to use than local Bitcoins ever was. I'd like to see this thing used in automated ways by by robots, basically. That would be awesome, because then you get real volume. If you need to go like explain to a mom how to use this, and that's your only user, that it's a lot harder, right? But when machines start using it, then your volumes can be enormous, right? So maybe there can be discounting, for large volume traders and things like that. I don't know, but that's definitely something he should think about. What you just said there is important. The token. A lot of the criticisms I've seen of this on Twitter are people saying this thing doesn't need a token, and they're right. It doesn't need a token. But what the token does, and the low valuation does, is it incentivizes all of us to basically go on the journey and try to figure out how to make this thing as successful as possible. We're basically given an equity stake. You can think of ourselves as almost like employees, right? By getting in at such a low valuation, we're basically getting in almost free. We're paying something, but it's almost free, effectively. So we're now equity stakeholders in this thing. So for people that are going to have a decent sized position in this, people that are in the pool that have the multiplier, they're going to be absolutely incentivized to figure out how to make this thing as successful as possible. So if you have a useful idea that's going to help Provex succeed, you should probably start working on it, right? And you should probably coordinate with the community, right? Because if this thing can be successful, it's a moonshot. It's unlikely, but you're looking at $1 billion token, right? Multi-billion-dollar token potentially if it's properly successful, right? And I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but doesn't mean we shouldn't try, right? We should absolutely try. Like, you're not given opportunities like this very often, right? And some people are going to be passive and say, I just want to get a 2x. Moritz is one of these guys. He's in it for the 2x. But those of you that are a little bit more long term can definitely start thinking about whether your thing is marketing or whether your thing is arbitrage trading, like we are into. Whatever your use case is, or whatever the thing that you could bring to this thing, you now will have an economic incentive to bring it, because it's ultimately in your collective interest to make this thing succeed. If this thing succeeds in a big way, it will turn around Pulsechain. I actually believe that. It'll give Pulsechain a new lease on life. It'll give Richard a lot of clout, a lot of kudos, and he can start to become the greatest person in crypto again, right? And that's what I want to try have happen. What's in it for me? I've got enormous time and money invested in this community, and I want to see it continue to exist and thrive, right? I'm going to do very well if Pulsechain does very well, right? So it's very important to me, and I think it's important to you guys listening as well. Cool. All right, Moritz, you've been very patient. Come tell us all the things you want to tell us about why this is a terrible idea.
No, I just mostly think that if you're like super bullish long run, like have a long-term investor mindset, it's not gonna go well for you, and you're probably gonna round trip the gains that you made. I think that the Richard Heart ecosystem in the next 5 years is on its way to zero. Like I think the probability that in 5 years the entire ecosystem valuation is way lower than it is now is really high. So I view this more as kind of a counter trend, really. I think you're gonna have a lot of new enthusiasm when this thing comes out, and maybe it lasts for a year, maybe 6 months, something like that. But I think in the long run, you want to be sooner or later selling this. And I think you even agree with this, Buck, that that's probably the trajectory of the ecosystem. So I think...
I feel like that about all of crypto, by the way, right? I think most of it goes to... So it's not a...
So
your point to me is like not a unique one to us. It's like I assume most things don't do very well.
I agree. And then like the second comment that I have is you guys basically made a lot of comments about the total addressable market, which is basically saying, oh, the total addressable market is huge. But I think that kind of leads you to be way too bullish, because you're probably not going to capture almost anything of that market. Like if you think about the restaurant business the total addressable market of people going to restaurants is huge. But if you open your one shitty restaurant somewhere, you're gonna capture basically nothing.
No, but
so
that's that's an awful example. Restaurants are completely unscalable, right? Whereas like you look at something like Amazon, and Amazon is scalable, right? Amazon captured, all of its, all the market share, right? There's no reason why this thing can't scale. This thing can scale way better than a restaurant. That's an awful example.
But I'm not saying that there are not scalability differences. Obviously there are. I'm just saying that if you just look at the total addressable market, this is basically the startup founder trick where they just tell you, oh, we have this huge total addressable market, but then the real question is how much are you actually going to capture of that? And I think the probability that the percentage that you're going to capture is very low is very high.
Yeah,
that is my
there we agree. I think the probability of success is low, but if you have success, this is software. It scales in a way that restaurants never can. Even McDonald's, is the best example of scaling, right? But it's still a relatively small percentage of things. Whereas this is software. Software scales, and you get a monopoly oftentimes if you're the big winner, or you're an oligopoly where you're like Google and Apple, for example.
There is an addressable market here, right? And the market that currently exists for it right now, other than local Bitcoins, which got shut down, so that that there was no addressable market, or I'm sorry, there was no market for it for a while. But the market that we have for it is relatively small and unknown. Whereas Richard has a giant megaphone. If the tech is good and it works, and other people around the crypto, they will be able to use it without having to actually buy anything or come to Pulsechain. They can just use it, pay the fee, and that fee goes to Pulsechain anyway, right? Like, you can't tell me, Moritz, that this is only going to get $5 million of volume in a month, which is what ZK P2P gets right now. Like, the megaphone that Richard has is significantly louder than whatever they're doing. And the attention grabbing that he is capable of doing is significantly more than what they're doing, right? So he can engulf this market and he can basically make ZK P2P the MySpace of that sector and be the Facebook of it. You understand?
Pretty easily. And he's got the pre-built community, and he's got a massive bag as well. So he can bootstrap this a lot easier than I could. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody cares who I am. I don't have billions of dollars. He does, right? It's a huge starting advantage.
So we can agree that there's probably some some wiggle room how much volume you're exactly gonna get. But as long as we agree that in 5 years the ecosystem is probably gonna be way lower than it is now, this just means pretty much for almost everyone this should be just more of a 6 months to 1 year trade maybe, and not such a long-term investment. And I think the community generally is overly optimistic. Not now because the prices are so right, but they tend to believe in stuff. And I think if you believe in this for a long run, you're probably gonna round trip. That was basically my only point here. And we can argue whether it's gonna have 5 million or 10 million volume. I don't really know.
Anytime you invest in something like this, like the mode, so the most likely outcome is zero over the long term, right? That's the way it is, right? That's anytime you invest in new tech, right? So it's not any different with any other VC tech, right? The most likely outcome is zero, right? That shouldn't scare you. That shouldn't dissuade you. This is still an opportunity, right? But the most probable outcome in any tech investment is always zero, right? That's you go into it expecting it to fail. Oftentimes, right? I expect this to fail too over the long term. However, it doesn't mean you don't try, right? If he gets it right, we make a ton of money. Will he get it right? Probably not, but that's okay.
Let me say it in another way. So if you think about the reasons why you should be excited about this launch, I think probably 95% of my excitement comes from the low valuation, and maybe 5% or even less comes from the potential of the actual product. These are like my probabilities. So I think the real opportunity is pretty much just the low valuation. And the product kind of doesn't even matter. And I'm actually really happy if the token is gonna launch first and there's no product, because I think there will be most of the like financial opportunity will already be there when you just have the token without the product. So this is kind of the way I think about it, that you just basically are excited about the low valuation and not so much about the product. Because I think if you believe in the product, you're most likely gonna get wrecked. And I think the listeners here should probably all be looking for an exit sooner or later. When is obviously up to you, but being a believer here is most likely going to get you wrecked.
Yeah, and I think it's a cynical take, but I broadly agree with it. It's good to take wins when you get them, right? You should DCA out of things that have done really well and diversify your exposure. You don't need to hold absolutely everything all the way till the bitter end, right? You should examine your portfolio every day and not be a believer in sunk cost fallacies, right? Like that's a fair thing to do. I think there's enough potential here that this is how he could try to win, but that is not to say that it's probabilistic that he will win, right? This is hard. He's gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to do that. And yeah, indeed, if I see this thing priced to perfection, and I don't see it surpassing its my expectations for it, I'm going to be looking to DCA out as well, right? And that's okay. Like you're allowed to do that. But you have to look at its future and your assessment of what you think its future is likely to be. And for now, I think there's a tremendous opportunity here.
And that shows you that he always thinks about himself as so much better. So he wouldn't really go with the attitude, oh, this new thing that I'm doing is probably gonna fail because I'm shit. He will probably, because I'm so amazing, this is obviously gonna succeed. So I'm just gonna do it publicly.
So just to try to get kind of another perspective, what do you think that, let's say what you see at the closing, nearing the end of the sacrifice? So there's many people I know privately. There's probably at least a few $100,000 that I know of privately that's sitting sidelined, waiting to see exactly what is raised up until the moment that the multiplier basically starts to fall off. Is there a number or an amount of participation that you would see that would maybe be indicative of maybe outside participation or private funding that you were kind of mentioning, you don't think he has a lot of private capital kind of waiting for him to deploy launch some kind of product? But let's say there is, that's outside of Richard, and we see those wallets come in later. Would that make you more or less bullish? Would that
less bullish, because of the lower the valuation is, the better your return is going to be.
Right.
So I think of this as purely basically this is a low valuation meme coin that Richard is launching, and the lower you can get in on the meme coin, the better it is for you.
Of course.
So and I would also assume that these outsiders that would be stacking are also probably in the same trading mindset as me, so that they're gonna G pretty fast. So that would be a huge negative. I wouldn't see this as a positive. And I think if you want to talk specific numbers, I think around 30 to 40 million sacrifice is kind of the border where it's no longer interesting for me. I think below 30 you can pretty happily stack, and obviously the lower it is, the better it is. But if it goes to 30, 40 million, then I'm out.
Yeah, because there's a reasonable amount that the market can kind of handle if maybe there isn't one entity kind of trying to absorb our market make that thing. I guess what I'd bring up then is have you looked at the Monad pre-sale on Coinbase?
Yeah, I read about it, but I don't think it's that interesting.
Yeah, so I mean I just bring it up because it's Coinbase's first kind of approach at doing these platformed public pre-sales, and in the past we've seen insane valuations of these things, and there seems to be general disinterest relative to what we've seen in the past in terms of dollars raised so far. So we've seen 123 million raised by what is basically the one of the biggest entities in crypto with the most amount of targeted reach that you can kind of get, other than maybe Binance. So do you think that even if he raised 30, that's reasonable, even if this thing only raises, 200
million?
Yeah. So Monad's currently raised 120. And what I'm saying is if a product of that caliber is only coming up with 120, don't you think that 30 would even be an overestimation of,
with the full backing and blessing of Coinbase. That's a lot.
I don't, just to be clear, I don't think he's gonna raise 30 or 40. That's not my estimation.
Right.
That was not a prediction what he's gonna raise. That was just kind of
that's
the way I think about where it would be too much for me to be interested.
Yeah.
That's I think it's gonna be more like in the 10 million range probably. And when I say that, I only mean like real user valuation. I don't mean the shenanigans that Richard is gonna do with second to himself.
Of course. So I guess a better way to articulate my point is that even if Richard came up with $5 million for his Provex protocol, then its valuation relative as a single entity relative to what Coinbase's ability to raise for a new L1 still feels extremely high, does it not?
Yes, I would say so, but you also have to take into account that this Monad raise is at 2.5 billion valuation that you're getting in, and that's actually not that great of a deal. If you look at the Mega ETH, whatever ICO, the Mega ETH ICO was at 1 billion, which is like a much better valuation, and they were 27x oversubscribed with like 1.4 billion. So I think the reason why
that's the
but just what I wanted to say, this comparison I think is not that great, because the reason why this is not so popular is because the valuation that Coinbase is letting you get in is really high. If this was like a $1 billion, if you're raising, or Coinbase was raising at $1 billion valuation, they would probably have like over $1 billion already, because Mega ETH got like 1.4 billion at 1 billion. And I think people value Mega ETH and Monad similarly, because Mega ETH is only an L2. So I think you have to think about this like in terms of marginal utility. The marginal utility of putting your money there goes down so much exactly in this range between 1 and 2.5 billion. So it's probably reasonable to assume that if they were raising at 1 billion instead of 2.5, they probably would have 10 or 20x the interest that they have now, because it's just such a better deal at 1 billion than 2.5 billion. So so if you're making these comparisons between Richard and Coinbase, probably compare more to the Mega ETH sale at 1 billion that got 1.4 billion. So
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. That's what we've seen in FDV is like with Pulse and Pulse X is we're talking about. I mean, wasn't it tens of billions after his supply, right? So
yes.
I kind of look at it like I think Dylan touched on this actually earlier, which is that you typically have a premium on Richard Hart coins or products.
How much do you want to raise?
In the sweet spot, the butter zone is probably between 5 to 10. But I wanted to make sure I caught 10, so I did 11. So, and he agreed.
I think maybe 10 is reasonable. My guess was like 10 to 20.
Yeah, 10 is really good. Like, that's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying.
I mean, if it's 10 to 20, that's a really good valuation, and all of you should think really hard about getting in, and even selling some richer hardcore coins for stacking. I think even at these prices, that's probably a good deal for you.
See, I see it like if 10 is the reasonable value to raise, then I would see it between 3 and 5 being the
8
would be like your most bullish scenario, I guess, in terms of interest and weight, right? And I mean, obviously, again, I just want to reiterate, I'm disincluding whatever large mysterious entity comes in at the end and decides to just big dick 100 mil or whatever it is into that address.
Yeah, but like my guess is like where this thing is gonna trade is probably between Inc valuation and PLSX valuation. So below PLSX and above the Inc. And if you think about it, that Inc has been at the $40-50 million valuation for the last 2 years at least, maybe even higher at some points. That means that even if it's like 10 million, that's a really amazing return. If it gets to 50 and you got a really high multiplier bonus because you stacked through a stack pool,
that's a 15x.
yeah, you have a really good return here. Even if it's a $10 million valuation, that's, in my view, that's still pretty amazing risk return.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Or you can complain about a fee and sack $1,000 and get 50% multiplier.
I don't think he understands, I guess, the dynamic of maybe like if you broke down, what you should do is almost like an infograph. If
No, I've explained enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you want more sacrificers, but again, it's actually counterintuitive to want to get more people in your pool to a certain degree. It depends on how much you're trying to raise, I guess, because obviously your fee is contributing to a piece of your bag or whatever. But it's like, man, if I'm giving you, I'm like, if you give someone $1 and they give you back $1, or if I give someone $1 and they give me back $3, but I have to
and they tax you,
pay a tax on it, I'm fine. You know, like why wouldn't I ever take that deal? Like, other than the counterparty risk, right? That's your argument.
Yeah, that was my exact assessment as well. That to me, that was the like the for and against. It's just literally the counterparty risk is the only downside, and the what was it? And the more coins is the upside.
Yeah, and again, it's like, why now would you see that party act against you when they currently control much more capital on the chain than that, and then they also controlled, you know, tens of millions more in the past? It's like their opportunity to have fucked you was substantially higher in the past.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help where I can, as always. By the way, remember that signups are going to go out soon for the 6th annual hexconference.com. That'll be on the same dates it's always been, January 6th through 9th. And oh, how interesting that the Provex sacrafice ends exactly on January 9th. The day that Richard normally speaks at the conference, if you go by the last time he live streamed, which was at the Hex conference, in 2023.
Maybe he streams again, Maddie? Maybe?
I mean, look, I would love for like Provex to launch, you know, on January 9th, but I don't know how the coin totals get added up that quickly. Does anyone have like a theory about that? Like, is there anything different about this sacrifice that could not take months to add up the point total?
Interesting. Hey Matt, I had a question. How does this Coinbase thing work with the Pulsechain.com thing you were talking about?
They have a new program that they haven't fully explained, but they put out like a long questionnaire about, or like a long application about it. And you know, so I applied and like tweeted about it and like probably signed some sort of NDA. And then at some point I tweeted like, hey, there's this account on Twitter that like really needs to know that like, you know, this is the Pulsechain account, and like, you know, we really want to get listed. And that's kind of where it ended up, where it doesn't seem like there's more progress, but there was progress. And like, what if I had heard something back initially and then didn't hear anything back after that? So yeah, I should probably like go through the application process again now that the Twitter handle changed.
Yeah, probably. And they're probably not going to say anything until they have their product reveal on the 17th next month. So it's going to be interesting to see what's all going to be included there.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different than the Monad like Launchpad. It, from what I would imagine that they had said, the context was that maybe it was like a bigger program than one a month or something. But it did also seem like there was an excessive amount of like stages of documentation that they wanted. And of course, Bitcoin didn't have to fill out papers like that. And in some ways, Pulsechain couldn't fill out papers like that, being so DeFi and everything. So
yeah, that is a problem.
You know, we do have a strong voice on X, and you know, even if it's a moonshot, I don't mind like, you know, putting a couple hours into it here and there, just to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Might as well try, right? I mean, what's the worst that could happen?